What's up, football fans? Welcome back to another Fans First Football Show. I am one of the hosts, Jeff Hartman. This is not Rob Stats Guerrero. Lord knows what he's doing. He's probably out one time, one off after New Year's. But I got Wesley Coleman filling in. Wesley, what's going on? How are you?
I'm great. I was asleep before midnight, but it's a happy new year, so that's why I can be up and do this show on this day.
I can't even tell you the last time I stayed up until midnight. Like, it just doesn't really, I don't know. It's just not
Like,
that big of a
like at
deal.
all or on New Year's Eve?
Well, really at all. Like, I'm an early riser. I go to bed early. So for me, it's just kind of like, what's the use of staying up till midnight and being tired the next day? It's just not for me. I don't know. Never
I'm
has been.
kind of in a routine as well.
But nonetheless, here we are talking about week 17 in the books, and what a week it was. There was a lot of movement in the NFL. There were a lot of teams that needed to win, a lot of teams that needed help. Maybe some got that help, some didn't get that help. Let's talk about the game that I thought was the biggest game of the week. I was excited to watch this, and again, it was a letdown for me. And that was the Miami Dolphins going to the Baltimore Ravens at M&T Bank Stadium. I thought this was going to be close. This wasn't close. The Baltimore Ravens blow the doors off the Dolphins 56-19. Now the Dolphins, not only are they not secured an AFC East championship, which means they wouldn't have a home game, but Tua is dealing with a sore left shoulder. Bradley Chubb, I believe, could have that was a non-contact knee injury, could be out for the rest of the season with an ACL. What was your takeaway here, Wesley, with this game? This was a dud.
I mean, the big takeaway is that if you just look at the 4 games that the Ravens have now played against the top 2 through 5 teams in the NFL, the Ravens are the best team in the NFL right now.
Yes.
And it's not close. And 491 yards of total offense that they put up is crazy against a Dolphins team that earlier in the year we thought their defense might really be a strength of the team of what they were doing. And then a Dolphins team is really in flux of, this is a team that has a 50-point win this year and a 37-point loss.
Yeah.
I mean, how those things happen in the same year, I guarantee that's never happened before.
Well, again, the Dolphins are coming off of a home win over the Cowboys, which most would call that a quality win. But the narrative surrounding the Dolphins has been, it's been that they can't beat these teams. They can't beat these teams. And I'll say this, I hate the Ravens. I'm a Steeler fan. I hate everything about the Baltimore Ravens, but no one, myself included, anyone else on this NFL podcast feed, no one was talking about the Ravens as like the best team in the NFL. It was, well, you've got the 49ers. Well, you've got the Eagles. Well, you've got the Cowboys. All these teams. No one was saying anything about Baltimore, but you're right. They are the best team, and I'd say the most complete team in the NFL right now.
So real quick, just on the Dolphins. So the Dolphins have losses to the Eagles, the Bills, the Ravens, close game against the Cowboys, but the teams they've beaten has been bad teams. They beat the Chargers, the Patriots, the Panthers, the Giants, the Broncos, again, the Patriots. They lost to the Chiefs as well. They beat the Commanders. This is not maybe this record that's coming out with a lot of wins. It doesn't really result in a lot of what we call quality wins.
Right.
They haven't beat a good team.
No. And a part of
maybe Cowboys.
A part of it is kind of smoke and mirrors, I feel, because you have these, you said 70-point outing over Denver, and everyone's like, wow, look at Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mostert and Achane running the ball like crazy, and Tua's be accurate with the football. They've run into these stretches where they can't move the ball with any type of regularity. You saw it against Baltimore. They couldn't move the football. And yes, they were running the ball at a decent clip, but it almost felt like the Ravens were like, you know what? You think you're going to run your way to victory? You're not going to run your way to victory here. You're going to have to throw the ball. And they were ready for it. They were absolutely ready for it. Now, looking ahead, the Baltimore Ravens host the Pittsburgh Steelers next Saturday. It's going to be a Saturday game, in which case that game means nothing for Baltimore. They've already locked up the number 1 seed. They've locked up the AFC North division. Let me ask you real quick, Wesley, if you're John Harbaugh, what do you do in that setting? Do you play your starters? Do you pick maybe someone that's banged up and say, okay, I'm going to rest you? What do you do?
Well, so the problem is for them is that they also, since they have the number 1 seed wrapped up, if you give people off the week 18, you're also giving them off the first week.
Right.
And that gets scary. So I think I play my starters the first half of the game.
Ooh.
And maybe
you want TJ Watt hitting Lamar Jackson?
I mean, I just don't. I don't know if I want Lamar Jackson not playing for 3
That's
weeks.
true.
I mean, and essentially taking off 2 games is
Yeah.
3 weeks without. So I now if Lamar Jackson, they score 21 points in the first quarter for some reason, then I'm like, okay, get
Yeah.
Lamar out of there. Like, but I at least want him getting some reps. Maybe, I mean, even at least the first quarter, and then the rest of the guys kind of making sure you control, who's in and out. But taking off basically 2 weeks in a row would be, I would also be scared of that, because I think we've seen that not work for teams as well.
Shoot, look at Tony Dungy. He used to always do that with the Colts. He'd always give Peyton Manning off, and you're like, gosh, that's a lot of rust. And then you're second guessing yourself. Yeah, I would probably play it like a preseason game as well, unless there's a player that's dealing with an injury that's been nagging them and they could use the 2 weeks off to get right. Yeah, I think you want to play your guys. Dolphins, though, they prepare for the Buffalo Bills at home. This game is going to be for the AFC East. This is a Sunday night affair. And this is a lot on the line. A lot of people are like, well, they already have a playoff spot. I understand that. You want that home game. You want to host a playoff game. What are your thoughts on that one?
What we just talked about, like, I don't see how the Dolphins can win this game. And the Bills have been up and down, and they've struggled. The Bills beat the Dolphins 48-20 earlier in the season. I think week 4, maybe 3 or 4. I don't see how the Dolphins win this game. This is gonna maybe turn into an ugly one. And then you're talking about a Dolphins team that has, like you said, all these players, and then their coaches all celebrated of what he's doing. And this is going to put a real sour note on them after the way the Bills started, the Bills come all the way back and clinch this division. This is going to look really bad on the Dolphins.
Well, let's go to the Bills, and they win. They had to win. They beat the Patriots 27-21. But let's not pretend like, let's say you woke up or you missed the game. And you're like, oh, well, the Bills won. This was not a pretty game. Like there were a lot of turnovers in this game, defensive scores. The Bills didn't really light it up on offense. I don't even think they had 300 yards of total offense last I checked. What was your takeaway from Buffalo, the way that they won this game?
Well, Buffalo's again, this weird thing of what's going on with them is this is 2 weeks in a row, because now last week they barely beat the Patriots this week, but then last week they barely beat the Chargers. It was a 2-point win against the Chargers, I believe. After when they smoked the Cowboys 31-10, we're like, oh, now they're going. So I don't know what we can necessarily find with them either. I think that they're being smart about figuring out that just give the ball to Josh Allen, let him throw 40 times and run it 8 times is not the way to win. That wasn't working for them. So them being smart about this, and 200. The Patriots outgained the Bills in total offense.
I'm looking at it now. That's
by
insane.
13 total yards. So Buffalo has got to, and they're going to really struggle with this, with a clinching game against Miami, and then also in the playoffs. But Buffalo has to commit to this run game. It has been the difference maker for them. And if they're just going to just try to throw the ball and throw for 350 yards and beat you, I don't know if they have a path to win that way.
If you go back to that win over Dallas, that was the game where Josh Allen didn't even throw for 100 yards.
Nope.
He said he felt like the kid in the group project that got an A and did nothing. And it was a great analogy.
It was.
But you look at this game, they only threw for 154 yards. I mean, I know what you're saying about, like, yeah, you got to run the ball, but in the playoffs, you're going to have some type of aerial attack. If I'm the Dolphins next week, let's air raid the hell out of these guys. Let's force them to throw the ball, because if
you can make them that way, trouble.
Because that's when they get themselves into trouble, when Josh Allen's going to have to throw the ball. I don't understand. This Bills team has been up and down all year.
Josh Allen 169 yards passing, Bailey Zappi 209. Zappi threw 3 interceptions and no touchdowns. So let's not get too crazy, but he did throw for more yards. And these 2 quarterbacks combined for 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions.
Well, I know Josh Allen had a rushing touchdown. They did like their version of the
he had 2.
Shove. They had 2. Okay, So the Bills, they find themselves in the driver's seat right now for the AFC East. We'll see how that plays out. Let's go out west for a late game.
Just to mention, there's also a possibility. I believe, can't the Bills lose this game and still not make the playoffs? Isn't there a weird scenario? Just the right amount. With Cleveland and one other team can knock them out. Like, there's a weird scenario where Buffalo loses this game and doesn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, because you have Indianapolis, you still have Jacksonville hanging around. Houston hanging around, all these teams that if one of them would have lost, they would have been out of the race. They're still in the race. We'll talk about that a little bit. Let's go to a team that's still alive somehow, some way. But for the second straight week, the Pittsburgh Steelers put up 30 points. This is like this is a revelation for Steeler fans. Like, oh my gosh, you're allowed to move the ball on offense and score points. They win 30-23 over the Seattle Seahawks, and it could have been worse. Najee Harris heads up play, could have run in for a score, took a knee. I lost money in FanDuel because of it, but that's okay because the Steelers won 30-23. They keep their playoff hopes alive. Now, here's what needs to happen for the Pittsburgh fans out there that might be listening. Steelers need to win in week 18 against Baltimore. We don't know what Baltimore is going to do with their particular starters and how they're going to play that game out. But they also need either the Bills to lose or they need the Jacksonville Jaguars to lose. Now, there's some weird tying scenarios. Those are the main ways. One of those two teams has to lose. If they both lose, if the Titans beat the Jaguars, if the Dolphins beat the Bills, the Steelers actually could be the 6th seed in the postseason. It's crazy, but here we are. Their Steelers are 9-7. Mike Tomlin's another non-losing season. There
17 years in a row.
Steeler fans hate that, by the way. They hate that record. They can't stand it. They call him mediocre Mike.
Well, this is the Ravens fans loved the undefeated preseason thing. This is like the Steelers version of that, right? Well,
no, because
haven't had a losing season.
Ravens fan actually like that.
They actually like it. I'll say this. So I've watched quite a few Steelers games this year, just in support of you, or at least portions of them. And most of them, when the Steelers are on offense, the games have not been fun to watch.
No.
This game against the Seahawks was a fun football game, and I was going to text you because, and it was at one point where I didn't know if the Steelers were going to win. It looked like they were maybe going to lose, and I was like, just regardless of that, this is a fun football game. But I don't want to mess with you about it too much in case they lost. You're like, no, it was not fun. But that was a good back and forth. It seemed like a playoff game. Both teams were fighting like there was, but it was both sides. That was a good football game to watch, and it was an impressive win for the Steelers, going to Seattle and winning that way against a Seahawks team that has basically been in playoff contention and fighting for a while. And they were, they were on a 2-game winning streak. So they, including beating the Eagles 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. That was one of the few venues that Mike Tomlin has not won in. He can scratch that off. He hasn't won in New Orleans yet. He also hasn't won in Chicago. Those, I think, are the only 2 venues left in the NFL. He has not won a game on the road. But this was a chippy game. It was a physical football game. I mean, and they let them play. I think there were only like 4 penalties thrown the entire game, so the officials stayed out of it. It was fun. It was an entertaining football game. You had big plays all around. The Steelers ran the ball extremely well. Geno Smith looked good. Like, my gosh, he was evading pressure like crazy from Watt and Highsmith. But the Steelers find a way to win 30-23 and keep their playoff hopes alive. Let's talk about an NFC team that benefited from Seattle losing. That was the LA Rams. The Seattle losing, the Rams punched their ticket to the playoffs. This team was left for dead at one point, and they're in after beating the Giants 26-25. Even though the Giants, they played them tough, the Rams 9-7 in the playoffs. You think they have a shot at doing some damage?
Yeah, and this is with on the big picture with Brian. This has been, the Rams have kind of been my sneaky team all year. Of that, if they got healthy enough, this is a team you don't want to see play. Matt Stafford has all the arm talent in the world. I get it. He can also use that arm talent to throw the ball to the other team. But when he's locked in and he's using his multiple tight ends this year, along with Nakua and Kupp, then their running game with Kyron Williams, this is a scary team to play, and their defense is just good enough to put you off balance. And Aaron Donald can still get after the quarterback every once in a while. Them clinching this week to where they can rest next week is huge for them. When originally the 49ers clinched a playoff spot, I'm like, okay, well, that kind of lets the Rams get in because the 49ers are going to rest everybody. And then the Rams might be able to beat them next. They don't have to beat them next week now. So the Rams being able to rest everybody, because they've been dealing with injuries across all of their starters, it seems like, they're going to be a scary team to come into your house and welcome, maybe even in San Francisco, but a scary team to welcome somewhere here in a couple of weeks.
Matthew Stafford is that quarterback that you just never know. He could get hot and he could start, and they have the weapons that they could start to pick you apart. And so when you talk about NFC matchups that they could have, whether it's Dallas, whether it's Philadelphia,
Detroit,
yeah.
How fun is that if he goes to Detroit?
That would be fun. And I would
them having their Cinderella season where they finally are back, all the fans, and then he goes down there and just shuts it down.
that would be great.
That's
That
a
would
fun
be a lot of
story.
fun.
That's a fun
That's
story.
a cool storyline.
I'm into that storyline.
So yeah, the Rams are a team that, again, I think a lot of people slept on them, and everyone was like, it's the Rams, and they weren't supposed to be that good this year. And Matthew Stafford might be at the end of his career. Here they are, 9-7 in the playoffs. The Giants continue their downward spiral. Tyrod Taylor was a quarterback, I think, in this game, and not
Yeah.
Tommy DeVito. So, anything else on this game?
I'll just say that, respect where it's due. Sean McVay has been, I don't know if I've been a fan of his, besides, I mean, he does some good things on offense. He might be the coach of the year. Like, this is pretty impressive. I mean, he's at least in the top 3 for coach of the year, because this is a team that was left for dead. And it was, all their it was whether or not he was going to retire, and he let all the coaches go interview wherever they wanted without getting extra permission. And was Matt Stafford going to be traded, and would he retire, and all this stuff. Pretty impressive to lock in a playoff spot.
I didn't even think about McVay for coach of the year. I've been big on the Stefanski train. I think that what he's done with all the injuries they've had in Cleveland is.
I just hate that team. I don't want, like, you as much as you don't like. I don't like the Browns.
I don't like them either.
They've got a lot of LSU guys. I just don't like that team. But yeah. I mean, clearly Stefanski's probably had, but McVay should be in that conversation, because what he's done is a different level of good.
You talk about Stafford going back to Detroit. I'm waiting for the Flacco back to Baltimore. And if Flacco goes into Baltimore and would end their season, I'm here for it.
That would be again, fun story. No matter who you're a fan of, that's a fun story.
I'll tell you what story was just shocking. A game that you're like, man, what the hell's going on? It's this Philadelphia Eagles team who is at home hosting the Arizona Cardinals. Now, hey, Steeler fan here. The Arizona Cardinals came into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers down. Now, granted, they lost their starting quarterback. Not that it mattered much, but still. They beat the Steelers as a 2-win team. They go into Philly, beat the Eagles 35-31, and it was the way that they went about it. The Eagles were up in this game, and the Cardinals, with less than 2 minutes, drive down the field, and James Conner plunges into the end zone. Game over. Like, this was one of those games where you're like, man, what is going on with the Eagles? I'll say it right now. Go back and check the tape. The 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the 2020 Steelers reincarnate, which they were red hot. Everyone's like, wow, they're 11-0. And they fizzled down the stretch and were one and done in the playoffs. I see the same thing happening with Philadelphia. They're not playing good football right now at all. So what was your takeaway from this crazy game?
So first of all, I want to give props to the Arizona Cardinals, because this is a team that, if they're just being smart about the long-term implications in the draft, like, this is a team that shouldn't be trying, because they could lock up the second or third pick in the draft. They've knocked themselves down to 4th in the draft, and they could get worse than that depending on what happens. This is an Eagles team that I've been talking about all year that isn't that good. And I said it on the big picture that I felt dumb about calling a 9-0 team not that good, but I watched them struggle to beat. There was games in a row where they played the Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs, and Bills, where they won all of those games, but they were not the best team on the field. Like, I get it. They won. And there's something to be said for that character of coming through at the end and figuring out a way to win. But when it's every single week, you're just not the best team.
Yeah.
And now they are a team that's, really struggling at this point. And I don't think they are that good. We knew that they were going to be bad. The back end of their defense was terrible all year. They did all kinds of things to try to bring people in, to get reinforcements and help there. But this is also just maybe another example of a young quarterback having some success due to athleticism and a good system, and then getting the big contract, and then just the numbers aren't consistently there anymore for Jalen Hurts. And I think he's better than Robert Griffin, but Robert Griffin was the number one quarterback future of the NFL. Kyler Murray kind of had some seasons where it was talked about being the next big thing. Maybe Jalen Hurts isn't as good as everybody thought. I think he's got some weapons. We also need to give credit to their Shane Steichen, their offensive coordinator that left, who may be really an offensive genius, because he might have the Colts might be able to beat the Eagles right now with no quarterback.
No, you're absolutely right. The Eagles have been stumbling, and I've been saying it on a lot of these podcasts, these NFL podcasts. It's like there's just something doesn't pass the eye test for me. They're winning football games, but it's the way that they're doing it. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look like a championship team. And everyone just kind of poo-pooed it and said, well, it's the Eagles and they were in the Super Bowl last year. They lost a lot. They lost a lot of talent. They lost a lot of their coaching staff. You just don't replace that. And then I start seeing little things. Jalen Hurts saying that they need to work on their dedication. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but he said something along those lines. Then all of a sudden, Matt Patricia takes over defensive play calling.
Weird.
All these little flags are popping up, and everyone's just kind of like, well, no, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm seeing this as what's going on with the Eagles? Like, what's going on here? And it just seems like it's coming to a head. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm not sure if Sirianni is going to be able to figure this thing out or if he's ever going to be able to figure this thing out. But if I'm an Eagles fan, I'm worried. I'm really, really worried right now.
Yeah, and the Eagles, they had an opportunity here because they were basically tied with the Cowboys, where the Cowboys are playing a tough game against the Lions. The Eagles had easy wins against the Cardinals and Giants to close out their season, lock up first place in the division, lock up second overall in the NFC, and then they lose this game when the Cowboys come out. The Cowboys and referees, I'm sure we'll talk about that game, or you already talked about it. The Cowboys and referees beat the Lions. The Eagles, they screwed this up. Like, they're very likely going on the road now to somewhere like Tampa Bay or maybe even New Orleans to play a game on the road, and they don't look like a scary team to welcome in your house right now.
No, not at all. And so the Eagles defense might be the most elating thing. They can't stop anyone. They can't stop anything. Like I said, Kyler Murray was having all day to throw. He was hitting wide open receivers, and you're talking about the game on the line. Like, they had no answer for the Arizona Cardinals, mind you. So Eagles lose. That's going to be a big storyline for sure. But let's talk about your Saints for a sec. Okay. The Saints, they find a way to win against a red-hot Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. The Buccaneers were actually playing really good football. Baker Mayfield had kind of reinvented himself coming off the perfect game in Lambeau Field. 23-13, the Saints win. They're 8-8. What is this logjam in the NFC South? Is it just between those two teams?
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect there is a route. If both the Saints and Buccaneers lose this next week and the Falcons win, the Falcons would still win the division.
Oh, wow.
It's not over. Having said that, the Buccaneers losing to the Panthers doesn't seem like a very likely scenario.
Right.
So the Saints, I'll just say this was their most complete game of the season. They were winning 17-0. We got 4 turnovers at halftime. It was 17-0, and just played a good. This is probably the best our offensive line has blocked for the running game this year. The running game looked good. We really controlled the ball and did great, kind of getting Baker off of his spots. Complete difference of earlier in the year. The Saints' worst loss of the year was to the Buccaneers, 26-9, earlier in the season. I was not expecting this. This is like you said, a hot Buccaneers team that just kind of figured out, and this game meant everything to them. If they won this game, they won the division, and it was all over. And so they could have rested whoever they wanted next week, and now they're going to. I don't think it's a big fight for the Panthers, but the Panthers are going to do everything they can to try and upset the Buccaneers next week, and I don't know if that means anything.
Yeah.
Puts the Saints in a weird position. The Saints need a lot of help, similar to the Steelers. The Saints, to win the division, they need the Buccaneers to lose to the Panthers. Or, now that the Seahawks have lost, the Saints need the Cardinals to beat the Seahawks next week and need the Packers to lose to the Bears, in addition to the Saints winning in Atlanta.
Okay.
So that seems like a more likely scenario
to get. Okay.
To be to be a wild card. The Cardinals, they just beat the Eagles. They could certainly beat the Seahawks. It's a game in Arizona, and then the Bears are 5-2 in their last 7 games. Their 2 losses being a 5-point loss to the Lions and a 3-point loss to the Browns. The Bears, and that's a surprising. I mean, again, that's a surprising thing that's going on with the Bears right now. They could always beat the Packers, but the Saints need a lot of unlikely help to make the playoffs.
The easiest course is to win the division, right? I mean, don't worry about the wild card.
The Saints had the easiest schedule in football this year. The team that played yesterday against the Buccaneers, if that team would have shown up 12 times this year, the Saints would have locked up the division already and be resting starters next week.
Yeah.
They didn't.
It's gonna be interesting. This NFC South, not a great division, but nonetheless, someone's got to win it, and someone's going to host a playoff game.
I've said that all year. We're just penciling somebody in. Somebody's got to win this.
All right, let's do some rapid fire here. Some of these games which really don't have any bearing on the postseason or anything like that, seedings, but we do want to give them their due. The 49ers go to Washington to play the Commanders. This was a close game at first, and the 49ers eventually pull away, winning 27-10. They've locked up everything there is in the NFC. They're in a very similar situation to Baltimore in the AFC. Not much to worry about. They're 12-4. Purdy, everyone was worried about the shoulder, the stinger injury. He seemed to look okay. Sam Howell was the quarterback Washington. I think a lot of people were wondering if he's going to be the guy moving forward because Jacoby Brissett probably would have played, but he didn't. But like I said, this was 13-10 at halftime, and then the 49ers pull away with it. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a good confidence builder for Purdy. I don't want to give too crazy credit. He was making very short passes, and letting Brandon Ayuk and others run with the ball after catching it. But this is what he needed against a team against Washington that really posed no threat. They need to get in there and build some confidence up, and they did that. Their defense is good. We'll kind of, we'll see what they've locked up the number one seed in the NFC, so they can decide if that same thing like Baltimore, do they want to rest people for multiple weeks? I'm guessing you don't want to rest Purdy for an entire 2 weeks.
I wouldn't.
I think he needs to stay in a rhythm and have some more confidence against probably what's going to be a resting Rams team. So,
well, Christian McCaffrey's dealing with a little bit of a calf strain, I think they said, so he's not going to play next week.
McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel are not. I couldn't see them playing. They both dealt up and down with injuries, and if you lose either one of those guys, this team's done. This team has proven they have to have both of those guys healthy to be successful. If one of them is missing, it causes a lot of problems for them.
Absolutely. So the 49ers, again, in the driver's seat. Let's talk about the Bengals and Chiefs. This game was also close. At one point, it was 17-13 Bengals at halftime, and you're wondering what is going on. And then the Bengals don't score any more points for the rest of the game and lose 25-17. Again, the Chiefs are 10-6, and they wrap up the AFC West. But I watched some of these games. I'm not impressed with the Chiefs. Like, I'm not impressed with the Eagles. It's just that they're not doing it for me. I don't know what it is. They don't seem as buttoned up as they usually are. They're having some really bonehead mistakes and penalties. I think that the loss on Christmas Day to the Raiders was a damning loss for the Chiefs. We'll see what Patrick Mahomes can do if he has to play a road playoff game, which he hasn't had to do yet in his career. But what was your takeaway from this game?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you said. The Chiefs not a good team. Harrison Butker, kind of 6 for 6, including a 54-yard field goal. And he was all of their after they scored a touchdown in the first quarter, their second, third, and fourth quarter offense was just Harrison Butker. Like pretty crazy the way that worked out. And I like what I've seen from this Bengals team. If this team, if it can stay together, and then have Joe Burrow join next year, it gives them a lot of hope, because this is showing a team that can play, can fight. Their defense is going to be able to help out their offense a little bit. Not sure if they can keep T. Higgins, but this is really good, I think, for the rest of the team to show how they can come together and play together against, around somebody like Jake Browning. You put Joe Burrow back in there, and this is a team that's dangerous.
Yeah, the Bengals are 8-8. It's hard to believe 8-8, and they are in last place in the AFC North.
And they started off bad with Joe Burrow. They've actually had a winning record, I think, since he left.
Yeah, I mean, my wife said to me the other day, she said, "Man, the AFC North isn't that good this year." I said, they're actually really good. The worst team at the time was 8-7. Like, that's the worst record. No other division can say that. And so the Bengals just find themselves on the wrong side of things, and they're eliminated from the playoffs. And the Chiefs, like I said, win the AFC West, and they're moving on. The Chargers and Broncos, another AFC West matchup. The Broncos, without Russell Wilson, activate Trevor Siemian. I think that's who they had at quarterback. Was that who it was?
No, Jarrett Stidham.
Stidham. Even with the
better.
Jets. Even
Simeon's
better
with the Jets.
That's right. Siemian used to play for the Broncos.
You like had a stroke and remembered 5 years ago. Yeah.
Was it 5 years ago? Good Lord.
He was in New Orleans last year or the year before.
Man. Anyways, whoever it wasn't Russell Wilson. The Broncos win 16-9. The Chargers, without Justin Herbert, are a shell of themselves. Not that they were that good with Justin Herbert. Any thoughts on this one?
No. I mean, I don't know if either one of these teams actually cared about when it was Jarrett Stidham versus Easton Stick.
Yes.
And the Chargers, I mean, at least they fired some people, but the worst coach team in football, um, playing like whatever's going on with the Broncos. Everybody's loving to hate on them right now and attacking Sean Payton. Um, it's yeah, I think this was somebody had to win. It should have been the Broncos.
Well, I think this offseason we're going to be doing a special podcast on the whole situation with Russell Wilson because that's very unique. And
Are you
the
going to wait
request
till after he signs with the Steelers
Oh,
to
come on.
do?
No, 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 no. That's not no, not happening. Uh let's leave that thought and let's move on to the Packers and Vikings. The Packers, Jordan Love, 33 points, 33-10. The Minnesota Vikings just don't have a quarterback. They're throwing out everything that they have. They did the Josh Jobs things for a while. They did the Nick Mullins thing for a while. And eventually it's just enough. Enough is enough. And now I don't know. The Vikings eliminated now from playoff contention?
No.
Oh,
No, the Vikings are. Vikings are
okay.
eliminated.
The Packers are not?
The
Or no,
Packers are not. No, the Packers control their own destiny. If the Packers beat
really?
the Bears, they're in.
That's crazy. That
Yeah,
is crazy.
the Saints need the Bears to beat them.
Yeah, so Jordan Love again. I mean, they dominated this game from the get go, 23-3 at halftime, and then they run away with it in the second half. This any other thoughts on this game? This was not one that I really tuned into, to be honest.
Also I watched it. It was a good game. So this will be the first time that I'll say like maybe there's at least a possibility I'm wrong about Jordan Love, who I don't think is a good quarterback. This was a good game for him. I don't know how much the Vikings really have to push against that. I'd have to look more into the teams he's played, but I'm not a Jordan Love fan. I don't see him as being able to take the reins. Obviously, this morning or last night, everybody's going crazy about the Packers did it again. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. I think these are probably two teams that are just kind of in the middle of football, and they're okay, and they should be around 8-8. That they're playing each other, and one of them had a guy that maybe should be in the league, and the other team didn't have a quarterback that should be in the league.
Right. And I think that, with the Jordan Love thing, as a Steeler fan, I can speak personally to the fact that it takes a lot more than just one season even to show whether you have a quarterback. Like, it takes
Right.
longevity. You got to be able to prove it over and over again. And he has had his ups and downs this season. So I don't think any Packers fan that's a true, looking at it from not through the green and gold glasses would say that like Jordan Love is the guy. Like, I don't think we're there yet. Let's talk about some games that were kind of duds. Let's talk about the Panthers and Jaguars, which the most notable thing from this game was David Tepper, the owner, throwing a drink on Jaguars fans at the very end of the game.
Wow.
As the Jaguars beat the Panthers 26-0. That's the only takeaway from this game. This game was awful. It didn't even have Trevor Lawrence. CJ Beathard, I think, was quarterbacking for the Jaguars. And the most notable thing, the Panthers owner dumped a drink on the Jaguars.
Yeah, and it's clearly on video where it was not an accident. He threw a drink at somebody, like the contents of a cup. He didn't throw the cup. He threw the contents of a cup clearly at a Jaguars fan. I think the league. What my statement was, I think the league has to overreact to this. Like, this is, I can't imagine how they're gonna react. I mean, this is bad. Like, you can't have an owner throw a drink on a paying fan.
No,
in their own stadium.
What would the punishment be? That would be an overreaction. Were you gonna take a draft pick?
I mean, I think there's at least like $1 million fine coming.
For sure. Not that it matters to him.
Not that it matters to him. I wouldn't be surprised to see like a second round draft pick taken.
Whoa, that would be
which would be killer. He threw a drink on a fan.
I know.
And the fan looked like maybe a teenager. Like, I mean, I think he's probably mid-20s or something. But that you can't. I don't know. Like, they just can't. I mean, it might be like you can't attend games next year kind of thing. Like, that would make sense of like for next season, you can't be at any game at home or on the road. I mean, this is what David Tepper is. Like, he's a petty individual who a guy didn't give him a job once. And once Tepper made his money, he went back and bought that guy's house and tore it down. He bought like a $50 million house just to tear it down.
Yep.
I mean, so this is kind of what he is. But there has to be an overreaction from the NFL. if I just couldn't imagine if there's some owners that if they did this, I just couldn't imagine what would be.
I mean, to give you an example, when they're fining players $16,000 for just pointing at another player,
Man,
what's this going to be when a team owner throws a drink? You don't have trust me, it's annoying. I'm sure those Jaguars fans were chirping the entire game. You have to have some self-control. I mean, and by the way, who puts the luxury suites so close to the fans? That's
what
just a horrible
what
stadium
so
build.
what would happen if a quarterback threw an interception and then went over to the sideline of fans yelling, he takes the fan's drink and throws the drink into the stands? If a player had done it from the field, threw a drink on a fan,
Yeah.
like it'd be I mean, that guy would miss multiple games and many thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Like, this is an owner.
Oh, I know. I can
Crazy.
see a hefty fine and that's it. And maybe they say that, you can't attend games. Who was the last owner that wasn't allowed to? Was it Irsay in Indianapolis that wasn't allowed to?
Marge Shot. Is David Tepper the new Marge Shot?
That's a great comparison, actually.
We should ask him how he feels about German politics.
Let's not go down that avenue right now. Let's switch gears and let's go to the Texans and Titans. The Texans blow the doors off the Titans 26-3. CJ Stroud returns in a big way, and this game was never really close as the Texans led 20-3 at halftime. Any takeaways from this one besides the Titans just being awful?
Yeah, I think that this is just more into, I mean, at this point late in the season, you just look at both these teams, start talking about what it means for next season with them. The Texans are going to develop and be a scary team. And the Titans, I don't even know where their rebuild comes from. Derrick Henry is not Derrick Henry anymore. And without that identity, I don't know what they have. This is, again, Ryan Tannehill back to playing in this game, who I don't think is going to be there next year. The team's going in complete opposite directions when 1 year ago, these teams, I mean, again, the Titans look like a team that could go into the playoffs and scare people, and the Texans look like a terrible organization.
Yeah, the whole Will Levis thing. I mean, again, people love the knee-jerk reaction. He had the couple big throws, but I don't know, has he won a game yet since he's been a starter?
Wouldn't his first game, I thought, was like didn't he have like one of the best debuts in,
But
in
didn't they
league
lose?
history?
He threw like 3 touchdowns, I think, in a losing effort. And everyone's like, wow, like what a game. And then he Pittsburgh and he lost that game. And I don't know if he won a game after that.
That was I thought they beat the Falcons. It was 28-23. Right. I thought that was his first game was against the Falcons. That's the reason I remembered it. But
yeah.
Yeah, not a good team, and this organization looks, I mean, they're headed down.
Yeah, Mr. Hellman's no good. All right, let's go to 2 more games. The Colts and Raiders went head-to-head in Indianapolis. The Colts win 23-20. This game was back and forth. Aiden O'Connell trying to disguise himself as an NFL quarterback. Just doesn't have the look of anything. But the Colts, you brought up Shane Steichen. Like, the dude has his team ready to play, and they're winning games. They could have locked up a playoff spot if they had won last week. Nonetheless, they didn't. And the Colts now are in a position to make the postseason with a game against the Texans next week. So that'll be interesting. But the Colts are 9-7. The Raiders fall to 7-9. Thoughts on this one?
So, the Raiders, I think, blew it by having Aiden O'Connell throw the ball 47 times. I mean, he did throw for 299 yards and he didn't throw an interception. So that's progress. Yep. But asking him to throw 47 times is just terrible game plan. Now, they didn't have Josh Jacobs, so I get it. They were just trying to scramble to do anything. Crazy to me that next week, either the Colts or Texans are going to be a 10-win team. That's just absolutely crazy. The Colts, who haven't had a starting quarterback all year, like they had a rookie coming in that were like, was he going to develop? He looked like he showed a couple of things that might work in the league, gets injured. And then it was kind of Gardner Minshew's been their quarterback.
Yeah.
And they lost Jonathan Taylor for half a year and then lost him again a couple games later. Crazy that the Colts are in this position, also for the Texans. But next week, the Colts and Texans play each other. One of them will be a 10-win team.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Absolutely insane.
It's a resilient group. And I think that, again, Steichen for Coach of the Year, I'm not saying he should win it, but he should be in consideration. They've been through a lot. Like you just mentioned it. You have Anthony Richardson and everyone's like, wow, look at this rookie. He's dynamic. He's running the ball. He gets hurt. And then Gardner Minshew comes in and you've got your team on the precipice of a playoff spot. Like, get out of here. Like, this is crazy. Colts fans have to be excited for where they're headed. Meanwhile, the Raiders with Antonio Pierce, we're not sure if he's going to stick around as a head coach or not. We'll see how that pans out in the desert. Last game on the docket, the Falcons and the Bears. The Bears, you mentioned them earlier in the show, have won a lot of games in the past stretch. They are now 7-9. They beat the Falcons 37-17. Justin Fields, I'm telling you, this guy, I don't know if it took him playing for his career in Chicago for his job, but he's turned it around. Is he great? No. But is he dynamic? Yes. He's running with the ball. He's making plays in the passing game. And the Bears are going to have to make a decision on him. We'll see what happens there. What are your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I mean, the Bears are doing the right thing. And again, Justin Fields was hurt for half a year. And I mentioned earlier, they're 5-2 in their last 7 games, and they're 2 losses to the Lions and Browns. This is a team that can compete with anybody right now. Big deal for the Bears when they got DJ Moore from the Panthers. That kind of stupid move from the Panthers, but bringing in an actual receiver to Justin Fields has been a big deal for him. And then, I mean, they're always going to have a running game outside of him. And Khalil Herbert, like in this game, had 18 rushes for 124 yards. Again, this is a team, they're going to have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. They're also going to have like another top 10 pick. If they decide to go with a quarterback, they could flip Justin Fields for 2 firsts from somebody, if not 3 firsts. Yeah. And then I mean, this is really a team in a good position to go either way, whether they keep Fields or not. If they don't want to keep Fields, if they do want to keep Fields, they can trade the number 1 overall pick for a huge haul this year again. And so the Bears are actually in a good position, I think, for a team with a losing record. And the Bears have another competitive game next week where they're needing to play the Packers, and I think that's going to be a fun game for the Bears, where they're going to want to go in there and hurt Packers' feelings and beat them at Lambeau.
For sure. Like you said, the Bears are in a great spot. Everyone laughed when they traded away the pick last year to Carolina. Carolina has the top pick, so now they own that pick this year with the quarterback class coming out. If they choose to move on from Fields, they will probably have people that say, like, hey, what's it going to take to get the first pick? Hey, let's play this game. Let's keep rolling it. Let's keep rolling the dice. And they're going to have more picks in the first round. They're going to have their own pick in the first round. The Bears are set up. But again, picks are only great if you can actually execute and get quality players. Look at what Cleveland did for all those years, well over a decade. Well, the top pick, if you pick the wrong players, it doesn't matter. Then you just wasted those draft picks. So we'll see what the Bears do. Nonetheless, they win. And that wraps up Sunday's action in week 17. Week 18, just like the NFL wants it, is going to be really exciting. It's going to come down to the wire. As a Steeler fan, I freaking hate they play on Saturday at 4:30, and then there might be a chance that you have to wait until Sunday night to know if you're going to get into the playoffs or not. Like that's killer, man. But any final takeaways on the week that was?
Yeah, so this is kind of coming together the way we all hoped. A lot of the main portion of the middle of the season was kind of quote unquote boring because we had 3-4 teams that are like, these guys are better than everybody else. We got like 3 teams that are terrible, and then there's a whole bunch of jumbled mess in the middle of teams that we didn't think that were very good. And it was, anybody that end up playing these 2 or 3 good teams are just going to get shelled. It's not really showing that way anymore. Besides the Ravens, outside of the Ravens, anybody in this league can lose right now. And there's some pretty interesting playoff scenarios. I think this is exactly what the NFL wants with this flex schedule for week 18. This is perfect. Everybody's going to be tuning in. You are going to watch football all day Saturday and all day Sunday, watching every single play, wondering if your team's going to make it in. So there's going to be a lot of fans like that too. So it worked out perfect. This is actually great week 17 and 18.
Absolutely. And if the Steelers, if perfect scenario is the Steelers win on Saturday, the Ravens rest their players. I don't care how they win. The Steelers win. And then maybe somehow, some way, the Titans beat the Jaguars, and I don't have to stay up really late because then the Steelers would already be in the playoffs, and they play at 1:00. That's a perfect world. I don't live in a perfect world, so I'm not expecting that to happen.
You're the Derrick Henry comeback game.
Yes, let's do it. Hey, the Jaguars have choked it away before, so let's not pretend like there's some veteran.
You're gonna be like, I've always believed in Will Levis. I've always told everybody there was something about that guy.
There's something about mayonnaise and coffee. I'm telling you. All right. Hey, Wesley, tell everyone where they can find your coverage of the New Orleans Saints, as well as where they can get you on social media.
Yeah, cover the Saints for the Dome Patrol podcast. You can find us on Twitter, X at Dome Patrol PCast, and you can find me at Wesley13, whether you want to talk about the Saints or anything in the NFL.
There you go. And you can find my Steelers coverage on the Steel Curtain Network. Wherever you get your podcasts, search Steelers or Steel Curtain Network, you'll find it. If you want to find me on Twitter, it's at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. That's a wrap. We'll be back next week, and Wesley and I will be covering the preview aspect of these playoffs coming up. We'll let you know what that's going to look like once we finalize this thing after week 18, so be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, Wesley, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.